guys, and welcome to my first episode of Flutter Weekly Widgets. So this is a new series which I am starting from today, and there will be one video available every week on Sunday of this particular series. So we will go episode by episode, and in every episode we will talk about one or more widgets of Flutter, because everything is in Flutter is a widget, so there are a lot of widgets, and we probably don't know what's the use of what particular widget. So that is why I have made this series, and you can expect one episode every week. So today we are going to talk about SizedBox. So this is a widget basically to give a particular size to a box. So there can be multiple use cases for using this widget. So let's start how we can use this widget. So as you can see, we have a simple material app where on the screen you can see there is no widget available as of now, but here you can see in this scaffold we have a body, and in the center we have this sized box. So what is sized box? So it is kind of a box, okay, where you can specify some size to it, okay, in terms of width and height, okay. So let's go back to its documentation and where we can see what it actually says. So if given a child, this widget forces its child to have a specific width or height, okay. So if you will give a particular width or height to this particular widget, then it will resize its children according to that, and assuming that the widget's parent should allow that, okay. So this is it. So let's see how we can use it, okay. So for simplicity, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a library here, which is a library made by me, which is random pk. So what is the use of this library? This library will give us a random container which will have a random color every time the widget tree is rebuilt. So similarly, now let's see how we can use it. So let's say we have a random, okay, one second. So we will import our random. I guess the library is not available as of now. Okay, now it should be available. So yeah, so this is the random pk/random pk.dart, and what we are going to do, we will have in the child a random container, okay. So this random container can take a child, a width and height, so everything it can take. So this video is not about random container, so let's just use a child, and here we will use the sized box, okay. Now if we see, it takes three properties. One is the key, which is a unique key, or you can say a unique string, number, anything which can differentiate between different widgets, and then it takes a width and a height and a child, okay. So what we are going to do, we can have a width of 100, and let's say we take a height of 100 as well. And now if I will refresh it, you can see we have something in the center where we have the height as 100 pixels and width as 100 pixels. But because of this random container, because we have wrapped this with a random container, so that is why we are seeing some color on that particular box, okay. If I will refresh it again or hot reload, then you can see the color will change. So every time we will do a rebuild, then the color will change. So that is just to understand how these things are working, okay. And if you don't want to change the color, then there is a property change on redraw which you can make false, okay. So I hope you are not going to do that, okay. So this is the size box, and here now let's say we can have a child, let's say a Flutter logo maybe, okay. And if we will see, then you can see there is a particular logo inside this particular box, and now we can give it a size also, okay. And now let's say if we give it a 50, so nothing actually happened, because there are some conditions, like this sized box width and height depends on its parent, okay. If there is a fixed parent width and height, then probably this sized box won't have that flexibility to give that height or width to its child. And this is the width and height which we are specifying for this child. So even if we are giving the 50 pixel size to this Flutter logo, this sized box makes sure that it should have a width and height of 100. It is forcing that particular child to have this height. That is why even if we are specifying this 50 pixels, it is not having that size of 50 pixels. It is still of 100 pixels as width and height. So let's say if we want to change it like 150 pixels, then also you can see nothing will actually happen. But every time I'm doing the hot reload, you can see the background color is changing, but there is nothing happening with this Flutter logo because our sized box is forcing our child to have 100 width and height. Okay, so now let's say let's remove this particular thing as of now. This is just to make you understand what is the use of these particular things. Okay, so let's say if our parent, because our parent also accepts some height and width, let's give a height of let's say 200 here and width of 200 as well. Now let's do a hot reload, and you can see, because even if our sized box is having a width and height of 100 pixel, it is taking the parent's width and height. And it will, because this sized box width and height is actually for its child. So now if we will have a child here, let's say again a Flutter logo, and let's see what size we can give it. Let's say 50 pixels. Then again you can see nothing is actually working because this sized box is actually dependent on its parent, and this parent won't allow it to have that flexibility to increase its size. So let's make it a 300 and let's see what actually happens. So again you can see nothing will work because and now let's go back to this documentation and let's see what's written there. So as you can see here, this, if given a child, this widget forces its child to have a specific width or height, assuming values are permitted by this widget's parent. So if this widget's parent should permit those values, otherwise this will not work. Okay, so again there's another line, if either the widget width or height is null, this widget will size itself to match the child size in that dimension. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so let's remove this particular width and height from this size box. Okay, then also you will see nothing actually happened even if the width and height is null. So what's happening here is, if width or height of this particular widget is null, then it is taking its parent's width and height. So let's try with the null values. Okay, will it work? So as you can see, it is working because it is not taking the width and height of this particular thing, it is rather taking the width and height of its parent. Okay, so I guess this should be clear, and we will also see when to use this size box. Okay, so this is one use case. Now there can be other use cases also. So this is something which is where we were defining the width and height. Suppose we can have device width and size. Okay, how we can have that? Let's say we have a property, we have a variable here, device size, which we can get using this media query class, and here we can have this size property. Okay, and now what we want to do, we want to assign the half of width and half of height of this particular screen to this sized box. Okay, so one alternative is, like, we can say height here, and we can use device size dot height /2, so it will give it some height, and similarly we can specify width. But because we are using this particular device size, so we can use another sized box with a different constructor, and that is from size. Okay, this is similar to that particular sized box, but now it takes a size itself, and here you can use directly this device size, and now we can divide it directly by 2, and it will directly not, yeah, so 2.0, so it will take a double. Now if we just remove this particular height and width of this random container, you can see this is the width and this is the height, half of it we are assigning to this sized box. And now if we just remove this Flutter logo size, then actually nothing happens, because it is forcing the child, the size box is forcing the child to have this particular size. Okay, so this is how you can use this from size constructor of this sized box. And now there are other alternatives as well for using this sized box. So there is one more, let's just remove this particular code, and now there is one more constructor which is SizedBox.expand. Okay, it actually, what it does is it actually takes the parents height and width and it expands that particular child of this size box. So if we see here, let's remove this particular code and let's remove this one as well. Okay, so now if we will see, then you can see this sized box have the height and width of this particular random container, which actually does not have any width or height. So it is taking the overall width and height of the parent, okay, or which is the scaffold. Okay, so this is how it works. Now if we have something here, let's say a Flutter logo, so then you can again see this will be on the full screen. Okay, so this is how these things works. Okay, so there's a size box, there's .expand, and I'm using this random container because just to show you that when we rebuild what happens, and you don't have to use it, because this random container will also you know, there will be some problems with sized box, like when we were using this sized box and when we were specifying this size, nothing will work if we will have some size of this random container. So if, let's say, if we have width here as 200 and height here as 100 again, now even if I give, let's see what happens. Yeah, so even if we give some size to this size box, now let's say width is 200, then also you will see nothing will actually happen, because this random container is you can say is restricting this size box to have its width and height. Okay, so that is also a use case. So this is how we can look into this particular sized box. So we are assuming that this random container is not there, and then we are assigning the width and height to this particular sized box. So as you can see, width and height, and this is the use case of size box. Okay, now there is one more thing, which is sized overflow box. Okay, so what is that? So suppose this was our size box with which is forcing its width and height to be 200, but let's say the Flutter logo wants let's make it 100 rather than 200. Okay, but this Flutter logo wants something else. It wants its size to be 200. Then will it work? No, it won't work. But in that case, you can use a sized overflow box. What it will do, it will allow the overflow of that particular child. So let's see, it takes a size argument, and here we can have a size where we can say again 100 and 100. And now if we will just rebuild it, you can see the Flutter logo can overflow itself. Okay, it is taking the size of 200 and now it is going on the top of that sized box, and it is expanding even without checking that the size is forced, that this particular sized overflow box is forcing us to have a size of 100 and 100, but because it is an overflow box, it can overflow, the child can overflow itself, and that is why we can use here 200 as a size. But let's say it's 100, then you can see it will be inside that box. And now let's make it a 50, so you can see this is how it works, and then you can align also. Okay, similarly we also have a overflow box, and that is also similar to a sized overflow box, but it does not have any you can see size property. It have the alignment, max height, max width, and something like that. Okay, so this is also you can use if you want, and yeah, that's it. So this is one other use case of a size box. Now let's see one more last widget which is available with this, which is sized box, and there should be fractionally sized box. Okay, so what it takes, let's say there was a use case when we were assigning this random container some height, okay, let's say it is 200, and a width, okay, which is 200 again. And now we want our sized box. Let's make it a sized box again just to understand, and let's say it's 100, which is half of that width and height, and then again it's 100. Now if we will refresh it, we will see there is a box, but this is again of height 200 and 200, but we wanted it to be half of it, and that is why we were using size box. But because this parent is not allowing us to have this height and width, which is 100 and 100, so what we can use in that case, we can use this fractionally sized box. Okay, what it will do, it will, rather than taking the sizes as a height and width, it can take a width factor. Okay, so we can say 0.5, which means height width should be half of its parent's width, and height factor also as 0.5. Now if we will just refresh it, and because we don't have any child here, so let's use a child also, otherwise you won't see the change. And you can see the Flutter logo is inside this particular portion. And now even if I give it a size of, let's say, 100, nothing will actually work, because it is depending on this particular factor, and that is why it is named as fractionally sized box. And if I just increase its width factor, then I should also increase its height factor, and then you can see its width and height increased. Let's make it 0.2. Let's remove this size, and you can see this is how it works. Okay, so this is the use case of this particular fractionally sized box. Now let's see when you should use this sized box and everything. Okay, so let's say rather than in the body we have a center, let's say we have a list view. Okay, and inside this list view we can have multiple children. Now let's say we have two text box as of now. Okay, let's make it a text 1. Okay, and 1 1, let's make it 2, and let's make it 3. Okay, let's refresh it, and you can see we have something. So let's make it in the center if that works. No, it won't work because this is a list view. Okay, so as you can see we have something 1 2 and 3 on the top. Let's just increase some font size of it. So we can give something like 25, I guess it should work. Yeah, that's fine, I guess. So let's just copy and paste this particular code, and as you can see we have 1 2 and 3. Okay, so let's say I just want to have some space between this 1 2 3 vertically. Okay, so one thing is you can use padding everywhere, but that padding is not always efficient to use, and that can also, you know, make your code a little bit it is not easy to read or easy to maintain. Let's say if I am using a padding here, let's say add padding, and then also I can have that particular space, but this does not look good. As you can see we are just increasing the hierarchy. So in that scenario what you can use the sized box here rather than a padding. So let's say we have a sized box. Okay, and then we can specify a height to it, let's say 10, and then you can see we have a space and vertical space. If you want the horizontal space, then you can use a width. Okay, and similarly let's say we can use a sized box here. So the advantage is, like, you can see our code is much better if you will see, because there are there's a lot of nesting in when you are making UI in Flutter. So we should try to, you know, make this UI as much as readable so that we can understand it easily, and that is why we can use this sized box. So this sized box can have multiple use cases. It can be used at many places, and yeah, that's the best idea of using this sized box. And one more thing, there is nothing like you have to use this particular widget only. There are a lot of use cases which you want to achieve, and you can achieve with more than one widgets. Okay, I could have a container to give it a height or a width, but I rather use the size box, So it totally depends on your use case, what you are trying to achieve. So here we could not use a container. We could use, but there is no like why to use a container, because it has a lot of things inside it, and we don't know how much expensive it could be to use a container without having that particular like we just want a height. And why to use a container? Because we could have a sized box, because there are some limitation with the sized box. It is just used for width and height, and that is why I have used sized box. Okay, so this is how it should work, and this is how we should use these particular widgets. So that is about this video, and I'll come next week with some more widgets. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please do like and subscribe to this channel, and also make sure to press that bell icon on the bottom, I guess, okay, so that you can get future updates and keep fluttering. So that's it from this video. Bye bye, take care. I will see you in the next video.